What if the burger you just ate wasn't made from beef, but something far unbelievable? In a small Texas town, a beloved chef's secret recipe wasn't just a culinary masterpiece, it was a horrifying crime. When his wife mysteriously disappeared, no one suspected the truth. She had become the key ingredient in his infamous human burger recipe. But how did this charming chef hide his gruesome business for years? And what finally led to his downfall? A quiet, unassuming barbecue joint in the heart of Amarillo, Texas. The smell of sizzling meat wafting through the air, the sound of laughter and clinking glasses filling the dining room. Customers lined up for hours, eager to taste what many called the best burger in the state. But behind the counter in the dimly lit kitchen, something unimaginable was happening, something no one could have ever suspected. The chef and the owner was a local celebrity. His burgers were legendary, his charm irresistible. But beneath that polished exterior lay a dark secret, one that would shatter the lives of everyone who knew him. When his wife vanished without a trace, the community was left in shock. She was a devoted mother, a loving friend, and the heart of their small town. But as the days turned into weeks, whispers began to spread. Rumors of Chef's strange behavior, his late-night experiments in the kitchen, and the eerie feeling that something was terribly wrong. Then came the discovery. A hidden freezer, tucked away in the back of the chef's BBQ shack. Inside, investigators found something that would haunt them forever. Human remains. And not just any remains. His wife. The truth was more horrifying than anyone could have imagined. The chef had been using human meat in his burgers for years, and his wife had become his latest victim. But why? What drove this once respected chef to commit such unspeakable acts, and how many others had fallen prey to his twisted recipe? This is the story of a man who hid his monstrous crimes behind the mask of a culinary genius. A story of betrayal, obsession, and the chilling question, how well do we really know the people we trust? As we peel back the layers of this case, you'll hear from investigators, forensic experts, and those who knew Marcus and Tanya best. You'll step inside the kitchen where the unthinkable happened and uncover the clues that finally brought this nightmare to light. But be warned, this is not a story for the faint of heart. It's a true crime story of darkness, deception, and the ultimate betrayal. And it all started with a burger. It all began in 2018, in the quiet town of Amarillo, Texas. Known for its barbecue and friendly locals, no one could have imagined the darkness lurking beneath the surface. The town was a place where everyone knew each other, where life moved at a slower pace, and where the smell of smoked meat was as much a part of the landscape as the wide-open skies. But beneath this idyllic facade, something sinister was brewing, something that would forever change the lives of everyone who called Amarillo home. Meet Marcus Johnson, a 38-year-old chef and owner of Johnson's BBQ Shack, a local hotspot famous for its unique, mouth-watering burgers. Marcus was the kind of man who seemed to have it all. Charismatic, talented, and driven, he had built his restaurant from the ground up, turning it into a must-visit destination for food lovers across the state. His burgers were the stuff of legend, with a secret recipe that customers couldn't stop raving about. But what no one knew was the dark secret behind that recipe, a secret that would soon come to light in the most horrifying way imaginable. His wife, 34-year-old Tanya Johnson, was the heart of their family and the glue that held their community together. A devoted mother of two, Tanya was known for her kindness, her infectious laugh, and her unwavering support for Marcus's dreams. She was the kind of person who would drop everything to help a friend in need, and her absence would leave a void that could never be filled. But as much as Tanya was loved, her marriage to Marcus was far from perfect. Behind closed doors, their relationship was strained, weighed down by financial stress and Marcus's growing obsession with perfecting his secret recipe. On the surface, Marcus and Tanya seemed like the perfect couple. They attended church together, hosted neighborhood barbecues, and were always the first to lend a hand when someone was in need. But those who looked closely might have noticed the cracks in their facade. The late-night arguments, the long hours Marcus spent in the kitchen, and the way Tanya's smile didn't always reach her eyes. Still, no one could have predicted the tragedy that was about to unfold. Rumors had always swirled about Marcus's burgers, Customers claimed they were unlike anything else, with a flavor that was impossible to replicate. Some even joked that the secret ingredient must be something illegal, but no one could have guessed the horrifying truth. Marcus's obsession with his recipe had taken a dark turn, one that would shock the world and leave the community of Amarillo reeling. It started with small things. Marcus would spend hours in the kitchen, experimenting with new ingredients and techniques. He became increasingly secretive, locking the kitchen door and refusing to let anyone, even Tanya, see what he was working on. At first, Tanya brushed it off as part of his dedication to his craft, but as the weeks turned into months, she began to notice changes in Marcus. He was more irritable, more withdrawn, and his obsession with the recipe seemed to consume him. She tried to talk to him, to understand what was going on, but Marcus would shut her out, insisting that everything was fine. Then one day, Tanya vanished. It was a crisp March morning when she failed to pick up her kids from school. Friends and family were immediately concerned. This wasn't like Tanya. She was reliable, dependable, and would never just disappear without a word. As the hours turned into days, the community rallied together, searching for any sign of her. But as the investigation unfolded, the truth began to emerge, a truth so horrifying that it would shake Amarillo to its core. In March 2018, after Tanya Johnson vanished without a trace, friends and family were baffled. She had no reason to leave. Tanya was the kind of person who always put others first, a devoted mother who would never abandon her children. Her sudden disappearance sent shockwaves through the tight-knit community of Amarillo. The search for Tanya began immediately, with neighbors, friends, and even strangers coming together to comb through the town, hoping to find any clue that might lead them to her. But as the days turned into weeks, hope began to fade. Marcus, meanwhile, seemed oddly detached. He told police that Tanya had left him, claiming their marriage had been strained for months. He said she had taken off in the middle of the night, leaving behind a note that he claimed had since been lost. But those who knew Tanya found his story hard to believe. She would never leave her children behind, they insisted. Something wasn't right. As investigators dug deeper, they began to uncover inconsistencies in Marcus's alibi. He claimed he had been working late at the restaurant on the night Tanya disappeared, but employees reported that he had left early, locking the kitchen and refusing to let anyone inside. Surveillance footage from nearby businesses showed Marcus's car driving away from the restaurant at an unusual time, heading in the opposite direction of his home. And then there were the texts, messages between Marcus and Tanya in the days leading up to her disappearance, filled with tension and cryptic references to secrets and mistakes. But the most damning evidence came from the Johnson family home. Investigators discovered traces of blood in the kitchen, hidden beneath freshly cleaned floors. The blood was later confirmed to be Tanya's. Marcus claimed it was from a kitchen accident, but the amount and pattern of the blood suggested something far more sinister. As the pieces of the puzzle began to come together, one question loomed larger than all the others. Where was Tanya? The search expanded beyond Amarillo, with cadaver dogs and forensic teams scouring the surrounding areas. But it wasn't until investigators turned their attention to Johnson's BBQ shack that the truth began to emerge. A hidden freezer, tucked away in a back room of the restaurant, contained something that would change the case forever. Inside, they found human remains that were later identified as Tanya Johnson. The discovery sent shockwaves through the community and raised a chilling question. Had Marcus been using human meat in his burgers all along? As the investigation continued, more disturbing details came to light. Former employees recalled Marcus's strange behavior in the kitchen, his obsession with perfecting his secret recipe, and the odd smells that sometimes emanated from the back room. One employee even admitted to finding a strange, unlabeled package in the freezer, but had been too afraid to ask questions. Customers who had once raved about the burgers now wondered if they had unknowingly been part of something horrific. But Marcus wasn't done yet. As the evidence against him mounted, he continued to maintain his innocence, claiming that he had been framed. He pointed the finger at disgruntled employees, rival chefs, and even Tanya's family, accusing them of conspiring to ruin his reputation. But the more he protested, the more his story unraveled. Forensic experts testified that the remains found in the freezer showed signs of being butchered, with cuts consistent with those used in preparing meat for cooking. And then there were the financial records, documents showing that Marcus had been struggling to keep his business afloat, leading some to speculate that his crimes were driven by desperation as much as obsession. The investigation into Tanya Johnson's disappearance took a dramatic turn when police discovered traces of blood in the couple's home. At first, Marcus tried to explain it away, claiming it was from a kitchen accident, a slip of the knife while preparing dinner. But the forensic team wasn't convinced. The blood was found in multiple locations, including areas that didn't align with Marcus's story. When the test results came back, they revealed a chilling detail. The blood matched Tanya's DNA. This was no accident. Something terrible had happened in that house, and Marcus was at the center of it. As investigators dug deeper, they began to uncover more disturbing evidence. Friends and family members came forward, revealing that Marcus had become increasingly obsessed with his burger recipe in the months leading up to Tanya's disappearance. He would spend hours locked in the kitchen, often working late into the night, refusing to let anyone in. Employees at Johnson's BBQ shack recalled strange behavior. Marcus would sometimes disappear into the back room for hours, emerging with a look of intense focus, as if he had been working on something monumental. But what was he really doing in that kitchen? The answer to that question came when investigators executed a search warrant at the restaurant. What they found was beyond anyone's worst nightmares. In a hidden freezer tucked away in a corner of the kitchen, they discovered human remains. The remains were later identified as Tanya Johnson. But that wasn't all. Forensic analysis revealed that the meat in Marcus's famous burgers contained traces of human DNA. The unthinkable had happened. Marcus had been using human meat in his burgers, and Tanya had become his latest victim. As the evidence piled up, the question on everyone's mind was, why? What could drive a man to commit such a heinous act? To answer that, investigators turned to experts in forensic psychology. A renowned forensic psychologist suggested that Marcus's obsession with perfection may have played a key role. People like Marcus are often driven by an insatiable need to be the best, she explained. In his mind, creating the perfect burger wasn't just a goal, it was an obsession, and when that obsession takes over, it can lead to a complete detachment from reality. She also pointed to Marcus's financial struggles as a potential factor. When someone is under immense pressure, whether it's financial, professional, or personal, they can become desperate, she said. In Marcus's case, his desperation may have pushed him to cross a line that most of us can't even imagine. But Marcus's crimes didn't stop at Tanya. As investigators continued to piece together the timeline, they began to suspect that he may have had other victims. Cold cases from the area were re-examined, and forensic teams worked tirelessly to identify any additional remains that might be linked to Marcus. The scope of his crimes was beginning to look far larger than anyone had initially thought. Meanwhile, the community of Amarillo was reeling. Johnson's BBQ shack, once a beloved local institution, became a place of horror. Customers who had once lined up for hours to taste Marcus's burgers now wondered if they had unknowingly been part of something monstrous. The restaurant was shut down, and the building became a grim reminder of the evil that had taken place within its walls. As the investigation continued, Marcus's behavior grew increasingly erratic. He lashed out at investigators, accusing them of fabricating evidence and targeting him unfairly. He even tried to shift the blame onto others, suggesting that Tanya's family or rival chefs might have framed him, but the evidence against him was overwhelming. The blood in the house, the remains in the freezer, and the DNA in the burgers all pointed to one inescapable conclusion. Marcus Johnson was a killer. The trial of Marcus Johnson was one of the most sensational and chilling court cases in Texas history. As the proceedings unfolded, the full extent of his crimes was laid bare for the world to see. Prosecutors presented a mountain of evidence, painting a picture of a man who had not only killed his wife, but had also built a gruesome business around his unspeakable acts. The courtroom was packed with spectators, many of whom had once been loyal customers of Johnson's BBQ shack. Now they sat in stunned silence, grappling with the horrifying truth. The prosecution's case was built on a foundation of forensic evidence, witness testimony, and Marcus's own erratic behavior. They revealed that Marcus had killed Tanya to silence her after she discovered his secret. Tanya had grown suspicious of Marcus's late-night activities in the kitchen and had confronted him about the strange smells and packages. When she threatened to expose him, Marcus saw no other option but to eliminate her. The prosecution presented text messages between Marcus and Tanya in the days leading up to her disappearance, showing a tense exchange about secrets and consequences. It was a damning piece of evidence that left little room for doubt. Witnesses took the stand, each adding another layer to the horrifying story. One former employee testified, "I always thought the meat smelled different, but I never imagined it was human." Another recalled seeing Marcus leave the restaurant late at night with large, unmarked packages, which he claimed were special ingredients. Even Marcus's closest friends admitted that he had become increasingly secretive and obsessive in the months leading up to Tanya's disappearance. "He was a different person," one friend said. "It was like he was consumed by something dark." In the end, the jury deliberated for less than a day before reaching a verdict: guilty on all counts. Marcus Johnson was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. As the judge handed down the sentence, Marcus showed no emotion, his face a mask of cold indifference. It was a chilling reminder of the man he had become, a man capable of unspeakable acts without remorse. But Marcus's crimes also raise broader questions about human nature and the lengths to which obsession can drive a person. Could Marcus have been influenced by dark culinary traditions? Or was this purely his own twisted creation? Throughout history, there have been rare cases of cannibalism tied to cultural practices or extreme survival situations. But Marcus's actions seem to stem from something else entirely, a combination of obsession, desperation, and a complete lack of empathy. Forensic psychologists who studied the case suggest that Marcus fits the profile of a psychopath, someone capable of committing horrific acts without remorse. His obsession with perfection and his need for control drove him to cross every moral and ethical boundary, creating a recipe for horror that will forever stain the town of Amarillo. So, what do you think? Could something like this happen again? And how can we protect ourselves from those who would exploit our trust for their own gain? These are questions that demand answers, not just for the sake of justice, but for the sake of our own peace of mind. The story of Marcus Johnson may be over, but its lessons will linger, a grim reminder of the evil that can hide in plain sight. If you have gotten to the stage of this true crime story, and you haven't subscribed yet, subscribe now and hit notification bell to support our channel.